forget. There we go. Okay. Um, so with that, we definitely want to be able to share out content through our LinkedIn. We don't, one of the conversations that we had with Lawrence, who does Johns Hopkins social media, was sometimes he sees clubs run into this dry patch of where they just start sharing out infographics and little info bits on squares, and we avoided Instagram for that reason, and we wanted to go with LinkedIn to be a more professional platform as well to share out the work of the students. So if you have anything that you want to share out from your programs or any way that we can get the word out, we would love to. So please feel free to send over any kind of content that you might have. More than happy to share that out. That can be sent to myself, Jew, or if you want to just send it to the StoryLab at jhu.edu account, perfectly fine. We also have our Notion page, which is set up in a blog style. Again, just a great platform to be able to share out some of your stories. I think some of the ones on there are the personal driven stories from Intro to Storytelling. So similar to the stuff that we were developing out with the Moth. Um, yeah, just a great platform. So please feel free to share that, share out with colleagues and friends. We are trying to spread the word as much as possible. Um, I have the next thing is the events coming up. I shared out a connections because I thought it'd be really cool. The title of the event sounded great, How to Be a Story Catcher, which just sounded like a fantastic opportunity. That is March 31st, which is a Monday at 12 p.m. So I know that the timing might not work for everybody, but wanted to get it in front of you. We are going to have our Story Slam on April 18th. It will be up in Hopkins groups soon. I just have to confirm a couple things with Christina, mostly around the platform. I think right now we're looking at doing it online Zoom session, but I would like it to be a webinar base. So all the people that are doing this, whatever the Sunday is, 19th maybe. I might have gotten the days mixed up. Sunday, not Saturday. Yes, thank you, Emma. Um, so it'll be the 19th. Apologies. Uh, I want to do it as a webinar. That way it's, you have all the storytellers as a panel and all the audience would be, anonymous. No worries about any kind of mics being unmuted or anything like that. But I have to see what that looks like getting set up through the Hopkins account. I didn't seem to have access to it through my student account. So again, there is a casting call for that. I think I have 4 students that said they were interested, including myself so far. I would love to have 10. And if we get more than that, again, preference would be given the Story Lab students first. But we do want to fill that in as much as possible. With that, I will be sending out emails because there's an opportunity to do a workshop with Amy Sedman, who is the executive director of Story District. I was talking to her this morning about it, which would be really fantastic. It'd be similar to the moth workshop we went through. She'll give some actual critical feedback, which would be fantastic. So I'm going to be sending out emails about that. So if you have, again, any interest in doing the story slam, please, please, please email me so we can get everyone kind of connected and ready to go. And I think that is about it for the upcoming events. And as always, as we get towards um, the last bit of the semester, which I mean, it sounds far away, but it doesn't feel far away. We will need to transition leadership. So I'm going to continuously harp on that just in case anybody has any kind of interest in taking over. Chloe.
For the story slam, um, and this may entice more people if you go one way versus the other. Um,
Yes.
is there going to be a winner?
No.
Great.
Yeah, no. There will be it'll be moth style in the idea of doing
Yep.
let's put a time limit of 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
I don't want anyone to feel overly stressed about getting a story out. There's
Right.
not going to be any kind of judges. That's where it's going to fall. It's not going to be a story slam like where the moth has their judges for it. I just want to get students comfortable with the idea of telling their own story, being vulnerable, telling it in front of a group of people. And getting that, even if it's just entry level public speaking in front of an audience, even if it's on Zoom, I think there's a lot of really great opportunities there for people to be able to voice themselves. So
And I just real quick, I wonder if you're specific about that in
Yeah.
your casting call. You may get more people.
Yeah, you're right. I'm
So
going to be a little bit more direct. I just want to make sure that I had
awesome.
interest first before starting
Yeah.
to time for the story slam. Yeah, this so I'm gonna answer your questions. I think I have it set for like 6 o'clock just because that's how I've been doing all of the events. It seemed fairly easy. It wasn't that way if it went on for like an hour and a half, it's 7:30, so it's not super late at night for people, just in case you have to get additional schoolwork done or anything like that. And the Story District workshop would be online. Um, yeah, that would be a virtual workshop. Yvonne.
I know that we briefly talked about this last meeting, but I thought that we had agreed that we weren't strictly sticking with the moth style storytelling, because they didn't allow for more playful elements like rhyming and music, and I know Chloe had
Oh.
asked about that. So I don't know if that has changed
No,
or
oh no, no,
if
no. It could
no.
be,
Oh, okay.
it could be more performative. That there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I want everyone to be encouraged to express themselves in whatever
I
way they
just wanted
want.
to clarify that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Um, I believe, honestly, I think that's everything that I have to cover. I would love to jump into this workshop with Trevor. So, does anyone have anything before I hand it over? Okay, looks like we're all good. Okay, that's all for me then. I'm gonna mute my mic.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Matt and Dr. Alterac and everyone else in here. I just have heard so much about this group, and every time I talk to Dr. Sherry, she inspires me. And I'm a student of storytelling as well, believe it or not. So I'm right here with you. But I wanted to come today, and Dr. Sherry knows this about me, that, like I said earlier, I just a quick background. I don't want to get too much into this, but I really have focused the last probably 8 to 10 years of my teaching career on looking at experiential learning. And about a year ago, one of my colleagues says, "Well, will you do something on games?" And I said, "A seminar on games." And I said, "Well, I'll do something, but I need it to be a little bit more than just we're going to engage in games." And so, as I was thinking about it, I started researching play. And that's really in the last year, where 6 months to a year, I've been focusing on play. And so, when Dr. Sherry asked me to come talk about storytelling, I was so excited because this is a presentation I have not done. So I'm excited to engage with you all. And so today we'll be talking about storytelling as a form of play. And so I just really wanted to throw this slide up here really quick so that you can kind of understand the approach that I take to play, and the kind of the idea and theory behind play, and how I'm conceptualizing it using Dr. Stuart Brown's research and approach. So I really like this quote, and he, without getting into his entire background, he has done a lot of work on play, starting with looking at an actual shooter during his career when he was at, I believe, the University of Texas. And there was a shooter, and he came in as a psychiatrist, a criminologist, and looked at what were the precursors for why this might have happened. And he looked at play and the absence of play, and that really got him interested in play. And that's what he built his career around for the last 30 years. And so the reason I love this quote is because when you think about your play histories from early ages and think about storytelling, as we'll talk about here in a minute, we really are built through play. Uh, and when we're talking about storytelling, being able to identify with the characters at early ages, you form likings and dislikings of characters, empathy, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's so many developmental aspects of play that we won't get into today, but I really want you reflecting on that, because that's where what's made you who you are today. So how are we defining play? So, first off, play is voluntary. It's not something we're forcing someone else to do. It's pleasurable. We actually enjoy it. It doesn't feel like work. And actually, the way that Dr. Brown conceptualizes this idea is that play is not the opposite of work, but actually the opposite of depression, which I find really interesting. It's inherently attractive, meaning we automatically gravitate towards it. It's free from time. We get lost in it. Think about a time when you were, for example, telling a story and it went on for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or you got lost in hearing someone else's story. And it was so captivating. It's free from time. And then you realize you have a meeting to go to and you're so sad. So there's diminished consciousness of self. In other words, when we're engaged in play, we're not worried about what other people think. I'm going to dance the way I want to dance. I can't dance at all. I was watching a Seinfeld episode a couple weeks ago. I don't know if anyone watches Seinfeld in here, but there's an episode where one of the characters, Elaine, is dancing at a party and everyone knows she's a terrible dancer and they're all talking behind her back, but she doesn't care. She loves dancing. So and maybe she needs to be a little bit more self-aware. So I don't know, but I don't want to take that play away from her. And there's improv that goes into it. It's not this plan, like I have to do this, 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 and this. It kind of happens naturally. And yes, of course, all of you are the experts in storytelling, and there's a basis in storytelling, and we know what we're going to talk about a lot of times. But sometimes we go in a totally different direction, and it's very organic. And yeah. So I hate nuts. Hate nuts. Always have hated nuts since I was a kid, but I love a walnut. Not because I like the taste, not because, oh gosh, the texture, but because when I was growing up, one of my earliest memories was my grandparents lived right down the street from us, three houses down. I'd walk down there and there was this huge walnut tree. And my grandmother, who's now 101, I think, we would lay underneath that walnut tree and we would tell stories. And she often recounts the story of me saying, for example, we were laying under there and I said, Grandma, will you still be around when I get married? And she says, I don't know. And I said, well, will you look up or will you look down from up above? And she said, well, Trev, I'm just happy you didn't say as a kid, will you be looking up from below? So that is my earliest play memory of storytelling because I remember us engaging in stories and talking about these different stories. And I think that's so powerful because not only am I establishing a relationship with my grandmother through storytelling and understanding stories, but also understanding the world through stories from very early ages. And there's, again, a lot of different forms of play in which we do this through exploration and collection and games and et cetera, et cetera. But storytelling is a really profound way in which we do that. So, enough about my story, though. I want to ask all of you this. What is your earliest memory of play? And this can be any form of play. So this could be dancing, singing, exploration. I'm thinking of like playing kitchen, going out and making special potions, in a little jar outside with water and different colors, whatever. So I want you to just take a minute and then I'm going to put you in breakout rooms and I actually want you to tell your story of play in the breakout group. So I'm going to give you a minute here to just think about some of those early memories of play. Early memories of play. And if you have any questions about what play is, let me know. Think about it for about 30 more seconds. And Matt, I'm thinking maybe breakout rooms of, let's see, how many people do we have here? One, two, three. Maybe 3 breakout rooms?
I passed you over to the host, so you should be able to.
Oh, perfect, perfect. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to open up our first off, are there any questions before we go into the breakout rooms to share our story of play?
How long are we in there?
So, great question. Yes. So, I'm going to give you all, how much time do you want? Let me ask this. 5 minutes? Too short? All right, let's try 5 minutes. And then I'm going to be popping in and out of the breakout rooms because I want to hear some of these stories as well. And we will then come back once we're finished. So I'm going to go ahead and open those. Oh, let's see. I don't see the breakout room option for me, Matt. But Zoom also did a update, so maybe that's what it is.
Um, I don't have one on my end either, looking at it.
Oh no. I see transfer to room. How do I do breakout rooms? Someone should have told me they updated Zoom. Zoom. Meeting info. We can't figure it out in 30 seconds. We'll just do it as a group. Host, maybe it's under host tools. Enable waiting room lock meeting. All right. Well, I don't see the option anymore for breakout rooms. I don't want to take up time trying to research how to do breakout rooms at this point. So let's go ahead and just get started as a group. Who would like to share? Who would like to share their story of earliest memories of play?
Uh, I'm thinking about when I was 4 and I had a absolute fascination with being Batman. The entire like I would run around. Not that I remembered exactly, but my parents would often remind me I would run around the house with no actual clothes on, just the Batman mask and my diaper or whatever I was wearing and my underwear. And I would try and jump down the steps. I try and fight crime, which was obviously my dog. He won all the time. So that's what I thought of when you asked that question.
Interesting, interesting. Okay. And I love how you talked about, again, and it fits perfectly with our definition of play. Doesn't sound like you were very self-conscious there either, Matt, just running around in a Batman cape. Wouldn't that be nice? But absolutely, and when we think about that, part of what you're saying that I'm hearing as well is there's some risk associated with engaging in that type of fun, whether it's jumping around, jumping off a trampoline, doing flips, going skiing. A lot of times, and Stuart Brown talks a lot about this, about risk as part of play. And even with storytelling, when we're thinking about it, we're taking a risk and just putting ourselves out there. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that. Evan.
Yeah, thank you for coming today, Trevor. When we read earliest memory of play, I went to just playing outside in the street, and then I added this qualifier of earliest form of structured play, and I thought of we used to build a fort, and when we built the fort, everybody had a role, everybody got involved in a certain way. We were innovators. We grabbed books to put the sheet on top of bookcases, and uh, innovated in different ways and had roles, and that was really an interesting form of play.
All right. Excellent. I love that. All right. Thank you, Evan. Chloe.
Uh, my earliest memory of play is when I was three, my grandmother on my dad's side was in the hospital, and she would soon pass away. And I remember waiting, and I was a pretty obedient child, and I was an only child, and I'm the only grandchild on that side. So it was like just me and my parents. And they got me this mini wooden puzzle with brightly colored, drawn brightly colored animals playing instruments. And I remember having that, and then like there was this little piano, with the little tiny like meh, 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 those buttons that like make those crazy electronic sounds. And I remember having those toys, and my feeling is that I was occupied and content, like during a really stressful moment for my family. And it just dawned on me, this like bizarre connection. My my whole dad's side, talk about play. Everyone's a musician, like a professional musician, like that's their job, including me for a while. I've since started doing other things like since the last in the last 10 years, but this puzzle and this piano, like I played during a really hard time, and I'm sure it helped.
Wow. Yeah, I love that you're saying that when you're thinking about coping with difficult situations. And therapy knows this really well. Is I my aunt was a therapist, and she would use play therapy, and actually kids would come, me included, and she'd have all these toys, and you could choose your characters, and you would set up a scene in the sand and tell her the story of what's happening. Why did you choose those specific things to put in the sandbox, and why did you create this specific world? And it does tell us something, right? Through storytelling, it tells us something about how you're feeling, what you're thinking. Are there things, is it a call for help? Is there violence happening in this performative play, et cetera, et cetera? So I love that you mentioned that. Absolutely, the socio-emotional aspects of play, and storytelling in youth. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Emma.
Well, actually, I'm going to copy from Chloe a little bit here. I'm actually also an only child, and I'm gonna go with the toys theme because that was a big thing for me when I was a child. Like I had calico critters and Playmobil and little people, and I would always use them to make up stories. I remember this one time, like I took like all my little people and I like lined them up like perfectly in the living room. So I was kind of like a bit of a neat freak with that as well. But I also seem to recall, maybe I'm a little bit too young by saying this, but I remember I think I used to watch Doc McStuffins, like that Disney show
Yes.
where she's like I think like helping out the toys, and I think I like would sing the song for my furniture. I seem to recall sometimes, and I was like helping them out there. So I ended up starting in musical theater, and then now I'm doing more like writing storytelling. But I do remember making up stories with my toys, and that was a big form of play that I really started in. I remember that. So yeah.
Oh, I love that, Emma. And let me just say this to those only children in here and now only adults, that they experience play differently. If you look at the research on in development, I'm a psychologist as well. So I did my graduate degree in psychology at the University of Oregon. And if you look at the research, they play differently because you don't a lot of times have those outlets or those companions to engage with. You have to use your imagination and create a play scene, create a play experience. And so a lot of times there's developmental differences in how we engage in play later in life because of that. And you're nodding your head. If you want to respond, you can absolutely, or Chloe. Yeah.
I I'm so curious. I mean, we can email or something about this, but I'm so curious about the developmental differences. And it's there's a vibe. Like when Emma said I'm an only child, I'm like, oh, yeah, I see you. Like there's just this, and they say what only an oldest. There are certain things that are similar.
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
think so. It's like I think like only children and oldest children are kind of like similar personality wise, but
Yeah,
yeah, the imagination part, I definitely relate to that.
yeah.
Like I get it. It's like an unspoken code, so I get it.
Well, and it's interesting because I know that all of the play that I did when I was a kid led to my professional career. Like,
Yeah.
there's just
Yeah,
no separating what happened. So I have
yeah,
to like attribute my lifestyle to being an only child partially. It's
yeah, yeah,
wild.
yeah.
I love what you're saying, and I will say that that wasn't my focus, developmental psych. I mean, I only took a few classes on it, but I will say a lot of the work that I remember had to do with imagination and crafting stories, and through just understanding rules of an environment because they don't have someone else to look at. Like I have a sister, and I can look at her and she does something, and I learn from what she does. We don't have that unless it's through maybe our schoolmates or something like that. But especially when we're talking about prior to school, we as only children, that's a challenge. So absolutely, yeah. All right, thank you. All right, Emma S.
Hi, everyone. I'm also an only child. So after my mom would cook us dinner and start cleaning up, I would steal her. She's an attorney, so I'd steal her dictaphone, an old-fashioned little voice recorder, and I would run around the house making the strangest noises and like taking clips of TV shows that were on and sing my songs and in certain times, I would record over her important depositions and stuff, but she'd have like a little message the next day of me just kind of going nuts in the house, and that was kind of my first memory and kind of my predominant form of play throughout maybe my whole 5 to 10 years old.
And what would you record? Like stories, random thoughts, what?
A mix of everything. Sometimes it would be like quotes from my favorite movies that I'd say in like 20 different accents. Sometimes I would sing. Sometimes you'd kind of just hear me running around and like breathing really heavy, like I was kind of going crazy and just getting all my energy out. So it was an assortment of all different things.
Interesting. It's also interesting that all of you, in some way, shape, or form, besides maybe Chloe, have mentioned something about characters, right? Whether it was Batman, McStuffins, etc. And that's part of the way in which we learn about the world, right? Is through the quote relationships we have with these characters. And one thing I was going to talk about today, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I could go on for hours about all these different topics is parasocial relationships, which is defined as our connect. We form what we feel like are these relational connections to fictional characters, to Batman, to McStuffins. For me, I even experienced that in adulthood when, if you watch Game of Thrones, when Olenna Tyrell died. Oh, I hope I didn't give anything away for those of you just starting out Game of Thrones. But that was my favorite character. I was devastated for a week, and my roommate at the time was making fun of me. But we do, early ages into adulthood, we're through these stories forming these parasocial relationships that are really, we think, are critical to us, but are certainly critical to development. Absolutely. You know, what's right or wrong? What would Batman do? What would McStuffins do? What would these characters do from our these stories that we love so much? And then what do we do when we're betrayed by those characters? They do something uncharacteristic of what we'd expect or want. Yeah. Excellent. All right, Shannon.
Okay, thanks. Trevor, thank you so much for being here. It's a real pleasure to have you and learn from you today. Um, so I don't know how old I was at the time, but I know I was very little. And when my dad would do the laundry, he would get a sock and he would say it's the bad sock. And then he would chase me around with the sock. And if the sock caught me, then the sock tickled me. So I remember like being so afraid of the sock, but then of course, loving the attention of the tickles and all of that. But yeah, I think that might be the earliest one, the bad sock. Joining with the character theme, the villainous sock.
Yeah, the bad sock. Oh my gosh, I love that so much, where you're actually creating a whole world or a character out of a very mundane object. Yeah, yeah, I love that. Yvonne?
Hello, everybody. I am the middle child.
Oh,
So actually, I had a very different childhood than it sounds like you all did. I had a very sad, sheltered childhood. We weren't allowed to watch television except for an hour on Saturdays and Sundays. Um, I didn't have a whole lot of toys, and I was always so angry because everyone bought me girly toys, and I'm not girly. So I had dolls, and I was so jealous that my brothers had Lincoln Logs and Legos. Um, but anyway, so most of my memories are actually me in a box. I loved small spaces, either the closet or a box, or outdoor spaces by myself. And so I'm originally from Florida. We had a pool. I also, some of my earliest memories, they throw babies in the pool and they float. That was me. So we were constantly out in the pool, and I have vivid memories of playing in the pool at night and having the unrealistic fear that I was going to be eaten by a shark.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And do you think because of the absence of maybe some of those toy objects, you had to create the environment of play for yourself? I'm just curious.
Possibly. I think people here can probably attest to the fact that I have since become a media lover. And so I didn't have, you were just talking about fictional characters, and for me, I didn't have that. Now
Yeah.
I do, and I love Star Wars probably to an unhealthy degree, but I'm making up for that.
I,
But,
you know, yeah, it's so interesting that you say that though, Yvonne, because I'm actually now a proponent now that I'm seeing my nephews and niece grow up, and my nieces, I think, oh my gosh, they're getting so grown up. 3, and then the middle one, Parker, he's 6, and then Cooper is 9. And one of the things I think about a lot, and I talk to my parents' friend who I grew up with, who's basically like an aunt, a pseudo mom, is that she says one of the things that she's sad about is we're just giving these toys, and it's like if you want for example, I'll say a castle, you go out and buy a castle, right, for your kid, as opposed to like, let's create a castle. Let's use a sock to create a tower. Let's use the laundry basket as the base of our castle. And so there is something a little bit sad, I think, that it's taking away that. And so I think that that's interesting. That's what your story was making me think about, is a little bit of disappointment. Even I was saddened to see that Lego Education is getting rid of their experiential play kits, and they're going to AI and computer science. And I'm like, but building and engineering, and like, I want my nephews and niece to like play and not just have AI. And so yeah, interesting. All right, did we get to everyone? Is there anyone else who wants to share?
I guess I'm the last one.
All right.
So, I guess I was more physically active when I was young. So I really loved riding rollerblades or bicycles. So, I really loved the blades. At one point, I even rode it into the McDonald's and just, it was basically my shoes all the time. And this one time I was riding a bicycle and in the park, and it was raining all of a sudden. And there was the street was like 90, like this. It looked like this. So I was riding down this street, and then I had to make a turn towards this way, but then it was raining, so I fell. Like, my knees were all like scratched. I still have the scars up until now. So after that, I'm not riding the bike so much. But that's one of my earliest memories, like playing. I was very physically active. I'm lesser physically active nowadays, but I guess yeah, that was my childhood.
Yeah, so you're definitely, it sounds like, at least as a child, a kinesthetic player, like
Right, right.
outdoors, going out and
Yeah, very
doing like
outdoorsy.
physical
Yeah.
activity. Cool. Dr. Sherry, do you want to
Mhm.
share?
Well, I'm going to have to date myself then, Trevor.
That's okay.
Okay, so I grew up in Brooklyn, and I just remember being in my parents' apartment. They would play the Beatles, and we used to do, like, there was a choppy checker, but I just remember the first thing that came to my mind was just doing the twist and dancing, to music and listening to the Beatles and in our living room. I almost remember the cover. It's really interesting because these memories come back when you start to think of it. I can actually visualize my living room back from the 1960s. That's I'm talking to you. And just just like for me though, what's interesting though, Trevor, is like I am very self-conscious dancer. You had brought up the example of Elaine. I like didn't care then, but now it's like I will not dance. Like you cannot get me on the dance floor. So I'm like thinking, what happens between the time we're like 5 years old and well, however old I am now, and now to like get to that point where like you don't want to dance anymore. You're more self-conscious. I don't know.
I mean, life happens, right? Like as kids, we don't understand that judgment. Our theory of self is developing. Looking at Piaget's, and developmental milestones that we're going through. But absolutely, I mean, as kids, we did a lot of things that we wouldn't do now. I mean, Dr. Sherry, I didn't want to tell this story, but I feel like I need to now trade is my sister still makes fun of me to this day because up until I was 16, I would go into the forest. We lived kind of outside in the country of Portland. And I would go in the forest and I was like Matt, but at 16 years old, pretending like I was one of the X-Men. And I was like role playing like Magneto. He's like my favorite character. I love his, everything about him, his history, etc. And of course, like I wouldn't do that now, like even though it'd be probably fun. And I even remember when I went to grad school at Illinois State and my first day walking through the quad, I was like, what is going on? Because it was all these people, all these students in foam. They had foam attached all over their bodies, and they had these foam swords, and they were going to battle. And I was like, what is going on? And that was like, they did that all the time in grad school. I mean, we don't see that at Johns Hopkins. Maybe we need to start having those cosplay experiences. But I think that, just as if public speaking, why do we get nervous right now? But my nephew could give a speech if I said, because we haven't engaged enough or had those interpersonal relationships or publics that we've spoken in front of. And so we're kind of like free of judgment. It's like such a gift, right? Oh,
I
I
love
know.
that. Thank you for sharing
But
that.
now I feel like there's the challenge to get Dr. Sherry on the dance floor. So maybe that'll be like extra credit one day. I have watched you dance.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, that'll be well, I grew up in disco too. Like some of you may not have been born. So but yeah, I'm not I
So
don't
then let me ask this, Dr. Sherry, what types of play do you engage in now?
you asked me that and I said I just my play is my work and you said and then I said and you told me that work is not the opposite of play.
Yeah.
But I that's a good question. I think at my age I like I think just like going out enjoying nature. I don't know if you could define that as
That is,
play.
yeah, that's exploration of nature, like going on a walk, like looking at the birds. I remember all the squirrels in grad school. Like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love it. Love it.
I need to find more play. So if anybody has ideas, send them my way. I think everybody at Hopkins is such overachievers and like how do you fit time for play in? And that's something that I think you must have a lot of insight about.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, and I think this is something, first off, Dr. Sherry, is we're going to actually have a little activity here in a few minutes where people are going to take the measure of play personality. So you'll see what your play personality is based on the questions. And then I just lost my second train of thought. But I mean, I think that we can find ways to incorporate play, and I'm sure you do this in different ways, into our classrooms, our workspaces. And so I think that's really important that we don't see it as after work, I can now have the time to play. You work all the time, Dr. Sherry, but you have the environment in which you can play. What that play looks like to you and your preference, it depends. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your different stories. And they all highlight really important aspects of play and storytelling. And so I'm going to go ahead and move on, and I want to talk more about your experiences with stories and play, but I wanted to go over just how is storytelling play in the definition in which we're kind of using. So the first thing is it's structured, and I really like the idea of thinking about it as kind of a narrative sandbox, right? Play is a narrative sandbox that allows us to kind of engage in creativity, and that's where it happens. And so uh but just as it is now that you're learning about different approaches to storytelling, there's conflict, there's resolution, there's beginning, etc. um it also is imaginative, so creates an imaginative play space in which we can engage. So I love this picture here. I used AI because I have a specific reason for doing that, but it does allow us to do it. So for example, every summer I choose a theme with my nephews and niece. I say, what do you want your theme to be this summer? Because I go back and I spend a couple months there. Dr. Sherry's seen some of the pictures, and they'll choose something. Like it might be wizards. Last year it was dinosaurs, and the year before that was ghosts and ghostbusters. And we actually have started using AI to create stories based on the characters that they want, and it tells me something about them. It engages them in the creative thinking process, and allows for them to really imagine what these characters might be doing. And then we change the story using AI. So they're like, oh, and of course, with the boys, it's all about farts and potty humor. And then I have to say, okay, well, what could these other things could these characters be doing? But I think it's going to be really interesting, and you're probably all have much more expertise on this than I do, where AI is going to take storytelling and how can we use it to create stories, change stories, etc. A lot of times it involves role playing and perspective taking. Again, we've already talked about this with the characters, and the way in which we engage in that play and the role playing tells us something about who we are and also those characters, and kind of really helps us understand the reality of the world, even though it's not really the reality. And then I love these last two, though, specifically. It allows safe experimentation where we can do different things and see how things work, make mistakes free of judgment, and not be worried about it. Be on that disco dance floor and you knock over one of the tables, and that's just okay, right? So, but as a kid, it allows us safe experimentation. And specifically with storytelling, it allows us safe experimentation now. And it's intrinsically rewarding. Like we love telling stories. There's something about telling a story in which we just find joy in doing it. And what I did with this, AI created this same young lady or the same kid now giving a presentation at Johns Hopkins, because I think, again, talking about these developmental milestones and as we progress through life, that kid, through stories, through storytelling, through those spaces and those environments, is now giving her own stories and sharing those stories with others here at this fictional Johns Hopkins scene here. But and I talked earlier about, for example, Lego serious play, and I did want to take a moment to talk about that because Lego is really at the forefront of this type of work in looking at how do we use Legos to tell a story. I was reading a couple articles about the winners of these grants for a specific Lego association, and it went to people that were using Legos to create scenes to show domestic violence and to help explain it through storytelling. So if I told you, like, hey, Shannon, will you create a scene that helps me understand domestic violence? Or another one was water scarcity. And so some of these really huge issues and challenges we face on really an existential scale in the case of the environment, people are using Legos as a way to bring that to life. I brought that even to tell my story of getting healthier and losing weight. So I actually just started. I have the amount of pounds, which I don't want to share, on a Lego set in my body. And each time I lose a pound, I take a Lego off. And that's going to be part of my health journey, is telling that story through the actions of using Legos. And so storytelling, in that case, I think Legos or these experiential approaches to using objects, as you've all pointed out, are really powerful ways to tell those stories as well. We talked about our play histories a little bit already, so I don't want to re-explore that. But I do want to have you scan this QR code. And I will say this is not a valid measurement. It's not tested or anything like that. It's just through the National Institute of Play. And it will only take a couple minutes, but it looks at your play personality. So I want you to go ahead and scan that and see what your play personality is. Let's see how many of you get storyteller. So I'll give you a couple minutes to do that.
Is anyone else having issues getting it to
Yeah,
load?
Trevor, it's not loading. Is there a website you can put in the
Yep,
chat?
I can
Okay.
put it in. See, I was trying to be too techy, Chloe. Sometimes it's just easier to do it the old-fashioned way. So let me pull it up here.
We just share this video with Lego and say, see what happens when you try to be too techy?
Yeah,
Go.
exactly. I know, I know. Let's see here. All right, so I'll put the link in the chat. All right, there it is.
Looks like you have a server error. It's not
Pulls up,
loading.
it pulls up fine for me. Weird. Hold on. We'll try this one more time, and then if
Maybe it was that update.
oh my gosh. Nothing ever goes right when I do a presentation, never. Um, so let's try this. So go ahead and just Google National Institute. So National Institute for Play Personalities. So let's try that and see if it pops up for you. Oh my gosh. And now it's not loading for me, but it literally just worked a couple minutes ago. Oh no. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's not a you issue, I don't think.
That's a first, Chloe.
I just got it to open the website. I haven't gotten to the um, test yet, but it did finally open
Huh.
that Institute for
It's all
Play
right.
Personalities. Let's see. Fingers crossed.
If it doesn't work in the next 30 seconds, we'll move on.
Well, Trevor,
Correction.
do you know some of the questions? Can we just like raise
Oh
hands?
gosh. I mean, I don't remember the specific questions. I do remember the different play personalities. So there's Joker, Collector, Explorer, Storyteller, Kinesthetic, Player. Which ones am I missing? Did I say collector already? Collector, explorer, storyteller, joke. I think those are the big ones.
I just put a link in the chat. I think that's like I like clicked through. I think that one should work. Is that link working for everyone? It's the 8 question quiz. Is that the one? Or
Yes, yeah.
okay. So it
Oh
works
wait,
for
no,
me at
this is
least, I
different. This
think.
is
Oh, it's different?
no, this I think this might be different.
Because I think I was trying to see when I went
That's
on the, so I'm
Oh
on
no,
It's a
this is
different
the same. You're
URL.
right.
It's a
It
different
worked.
domain.
Yeah,
okay,
this is
okay.
the same. Yeah.
Is it?
I got storyteller. Am I supposed to share my
Nice.
results? Sorry.
Yeah,
I was
we'll
not-
we'll share in it. We'll share in a second. Oh, and explore. I said explore. Competitor is on there too, and director. Those are the two I was forgetting. Oh, and creator. Is this the same one? I love it how I randomly did it and still got my play personality type. All right, so I'll give you a minute to do that. I also shared a link in the chat for Lego Serious Play if those of you are interested in that type of approach to play or want to somehow blend it into storytelling. Feel free to look at some of the information. There's a huge community there. Does anyone need more time? It's not the most difficult, but I also want to recognize that some people may be really thinking about these. All right. What were some of the ones you had?
I got Explorer.
Explorer. Okay. Did that surprise you?
Not so much.
Okay. And why do you think you got Explorer there? Do you feel, and how do I say your name, by the way?
Oh, you can just call me Jew.
Jude?
Yeah, it's Jew Sarang, but just Jew works fine.
Jude. So do you feel like you engage in that form of play now?
Now, I would love to if I had like more free time.
Oh my
But
gosh, you and Dr. Sherry.
of course.
Okay.
We're passionate workers, I guess. But
Other
yeah,
one?
I love exploring, like traveling, checking out new places. So
All right. Nice.
I got Explorer, and I'm also part of the only child gang, so the oxymoronic gang. But
All right. I can't believe there are so many only children here. Is that like a qualification to get into the program now that they're
Yeah.
looking at?
Yeah.
excuse me.
It's a
Only or middle
questionnaire.
children?
Yeah, it's a questionnaire when you go to join StoryLab. I don't know how they finally got around it, but it was supposed to be.
I
All
really
right.
wonder if there is something to it though, like the appeal of this kind of degree and like what we're used to, what we're attracted to, what we're drawn to. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. All right. Any others want to share before we now I can't pull up my other, there we go. All right.
Trevor, if you look in the chat, a bunch of us just like listed.
Okay, cool. Also,
I was just gonna say really quick that I also got Explorer and literally all those free things like I do. So I'm definitely an Explorer.
a lot of explorers in here. Storytellers, explorers. Okay, interesting. All right. I'm a joker, so I don't know, maybe I need to go with Matt to some of his improv community events and work on my routine. Although my students don't find me funny. I was teaching last night and I said, "Hey, Kayla, should I go into comedy?" She said, not your I was very bored. Anyway, so I was really thinking about how I wanted to sum up this presentation and talking about storytelling and play. And when I was thinking about this, I really thought about it's not that we don't outgrow play. We outgrow those environments that allow it. And I think a perfect example of this, bringing it back to Dr. Sherry, is you're trying to find or want to seek out environments that are going to allow you to engage in this play. And so I hope that all of you become advocates of play, whether it's through storytelling or other forms of play, and take those into those different environments because I feel like it's so needed. Again, we're seeing so much play deprivation in the world, in the US especially. I feel like we're not making time for play. And so I encourage all of you to do more of it. And I'm so glad you're doing that partially through StoryLab. So thank you all. And I just want to open it up for a dialogue to talk about this and talk about storytelling as a form of play.
I'm really taking it a little bit back to we've done the exercise a couple of times in our general body meetings. Like we've done the one word conducted story where everybody, I know it gets a little clunky, but we've done that twice, and I think that's a really good form. It's an improv exercise. It's also a form of storytelling. It's paying attention to details, and it's just adding a little bit of fun. And um, I agree. I make having fun with my friends and do like I know I have a little bit more exposure to it now because I have a group of friends that they're all other improv students. So like one of the questions on the quiz we just took, for me, assumingly, I don't know if everyone gets the same questions. Was like, what would you do if you go to the park? And I was like, make up dialogue for the ducks, because that's something that we now do, right? Like we make it a priority that if we're someplace, we're almost like, a lot of times we become the center of attention because we're laughing so loud. Um, so one of the things that I like to echo from your workshop here is letting go of that social anxiety.
Yeah.
If you're out in the middle of a restaurant and you're just having fun and goofing off with your friends and you're playing, none of the other people in that restaurant are going to remember you the next day. Maybe they'll remember like, the loud, obnoxious people laughing, but they're not going to remember who you are. Like just go out and have fun. And you know what I mean? So yeah,
Or
I love that.
or they may think I've had times where I'm engaged in play and other people are like, gosh, I want to engage in play. And
Yeah.
Matt, I love your story about that and the judgment in that because I was hired originally at Johns Hopkins through the Carey Business School. And I remember I'm like, oh, it's Johns Hopkins. I have to be so formal, so like not playful. I have to be very lecture based, very little Socratic method, very little play. And my first semester, my evaluations were so bad. Oh my gosh. And I remember they were the worst in my career. I was just so upset and talking to my friends about it. I'm like, I don't know if I'll go back. And they invited me back. And I said, you know what? I'm ditching this. I'm going to engage in play. And so we did that in a variety of ways. I building a community, and they're flying from all around the US. They don't want someone to just lecture at them. So, we did a happy hour, for example. So I set up a happy hour experience with them. And we were doing all these different things in the course, business communication, engaging and playing. The evaluations were so much better. And the learning that was happening was so much better. I would have them choose a scene of what their organization that represented their organization. And some of them were like balloons that were popping or things and they would have to use a story to tell about that. And so I brought that to the communication program too. One thing I'm even thinking about, I've seen it, and I don't know if this is why, but I teach a back-to-back persuasion classes. And the first one, they're much more participatory. And I think one of the reasons is there's a mic in that room. It's a big lecture room. And I say, let's use the mic. Who gets the mic? Who wants to do some karaoke? I joke. And they love the mic, right? It's such a simple thing. And yet these students are raising their hands to grab that mic and they're like speaking, so it's really interesting. Play can be so subtle but can have such a huge impact. So yeah, I love that. Chloe.
I mean, before we wrap, like, I'm just curious, what can we do to play right now? Like, not that the quiz wasn't playing or the discussion's not playing, but like, do you have a really short exercise that we could
Oh my
do?
gosh, I have a story one. It's not short. What time do we end in here, Sherry?
We're supposed to end at 7, Trevor. We should have booked
Yeah.
for a double
Yeah.
session.
You know what? Maybe you'll have to come back one day or send something to Dr. Sherry that y'all can do next time. But I do have a story exercise in which I have students, it's much like the telephone game, but it's called The Pope and the Rabbi. And they have to tell this, I tell the story of the Pope and the Rabbi. The Pope went like this, the Rabbi went like this, the Pope went like this, the Rabbi went like this. And then, and I talk about outlining, but also storytelling, like how much easier it is to remember something when it's in the form of a story as opposed to just statistics, just listing examples. But I don't have any like play activity right on me. I'm so sorry, Chloe, but if I think of one that's easy to do virtual, I'll definitely send it along. Now I'm so embarrassed.
No, that was not the point.
Chloe, you know what? You can, I will say this. I don't know if you're on campus, but one thing I do with my students after on Fridays is we've started a game night. So we play Jackbox for about 20 minutes just for fun after class. And so that's been really cool. So I'll have to think of something, Chloe, and I'll send
I'm
it along
virtual,
to you.
but thank you. We'll
Yeah.
see each other virtually again.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Any last comments? Thoughts?
Now, Trevor, that was amazing. Can the students reach out to you if
Yes.
they have questions after this? It inspired me. Like I always think about play and work and separate, how I can bring it into my teaching, but think about applications of how people can bring it into their work and really become a valued colleague, right? So I mean, it just made me think about work very differently, and I loved it. It's so, to me, it's so original, your approach and how you bring it into your work and just the joy that it brings. I just loved this, one of my favorite talks ever. So thank you.
Let me just say this though, that these simple forms of play, it doesn't need to be outlandish. It doesn't need to be over the top. Dr. Sherry doesn't need to dress up as in an inflatable, chicken costume and come into Johns Hopkins and do a disco dance to engage in workplace play. I don't want her to like lose her job or like, be committed or anything like that. There are ways to incorporate your form of play, whatever it is, into the workplace, into your personal lives in subtle but really impactful ways. And I really encourage all of you to do that and to really reflect on what that is, because maybe you don't know what that is right now. Maybe this is so new to you and you're like, gosh, I've never thought about it. And so maybe I hope that this presentation today really gets you thinking about it more and more critically and how to bring that in. I mean, even last night I know we need to go, but I had done this activity in a intro to comm class at a community college, and I would always have them draw a representation of how communication works, and they had the list of terms, encoding, decoding, blah 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 blah. And I said, no, I don't want to do drawings anymore where they present them. So I just dumped a bunch of this big kit with all these objects on there, and I'm like, I want you to create the model using these objects, and I want it to move. Like, because there were washers on it and screws and these big things that fit together, much like large adult Legos. And so they had so much fun. But not only that, they were talking about communication the whole time. The channel, let's put a rope around this because then we can rotate it. And by rotating, it shows that this channel, but sometimes the rope falls off. And so one thing I hope you all don't experience that I face in higher ed is a lot of resistance to play, is that it's an absence from seriousness or an absence from purpose. And it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be. And so that's what I will leave you with. I encourage and advocate for play. Go for it. Yeah. Thanks all.
Awesome. Trevor, thank you so much. I want to echo Dr. Sherry's sentiments. That was fantastic. And I agree. I don't think we engage in enough play. It's just in our everyday lives. So, maybe making some time for making it a little bit more intentional is fantastic. Um, with that, we can call the meeting tomorrow night for on-campus students. I know most of us are virtual. We are having our improv event at Johns Hopkins. Super excited for that. I'm actually here in person now. I traveled to DC today and have my wonderful hotel room. So if you're on campus and coming to the event, I will see you tomorrow. If you are on campus and not registered for the event, it is sold out. We sold all 50 tickets, but I believe there's only one student on the waiting list. I would encourage you to kind of show up around that time anyways, just because there's always a chance that someone doesn't show up for the event and you can still get in and have a lot of fun. It'll be run through DC Improv and yeah, it's going to be a fun time. Any closing remarks from anyone before I end the session?
Matt, I just want to thank you and also Ju because you guys have done such amazing work. I mean, it's not that easy to put together some of these like live events as we've seen